for the faculty who are not able to make it, or if you'd like to go back and to it later, you certainly can. So our agenda this evening is we have some opening remarks by Dr. Card, and then I'm going to have Renetta Fox from the Disabilities Office say a few words, and then we're going to move on and we're going to kind of jump into some online best practices. I'm going to talk a little bit about some D12 design, and then move kind of on into inclusive design. And then in the second session, so kind of the first session, the second section, we're going to move into more technology focus. So the first part's more pedagogical in nature, and then we're going to move into the more techie stuff. So we kind of broke it up. So if you're not interested in all the techie stuff and what Eric and Shannon are going to be talking about, you can go, or you can stay and learn about some of the new tools that are in D12 and such. So with that, and sticking to our strict timeline tonight, I will go ahead and introduce Dr. Michael Card. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
That's more than I deserve, but thank you anyway. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this tonight, and to echo, so I can say things twice, as it turns out. No, I'm very excited that you're here. I can remember the first time that I had the opportunity to teach online and how challenging it was, but that it got better every time. And I think we all have things to learn and grow, and that's a good thing. I wouldn't want to be finished yet. The other part that I want to do is to recognize each of you for your commitment to providing access to students who, by choice or circumstance, can't attend classes on campus. And this is part of USD's access mission, as well as part of what I consider to be the promise of education, which is really three parts. And the first part is we want students to have a life of meaning and value. And through that, we often think of the elective courses, but sometimes we're hoping to light a fire so that they can discover things about themselves in the same process that they're taking essential studies, or what many people call general education requirements, that as they explore the world around them through the literature, through art, through studying the social and natural sciences, and being able to evaluate information, that some fire will get lit in them. And that's one of the promises of education, is to have this life of meaning and value. Out of those, we hope to also provide an opportunity for our students to gain personal and professional success. That through this higher education, I was going to say we sold our soul 10 years ago for monetary reasons, but I'm not supposed to say that on something being recorded. But there are outcomes that provide monetary success for individuals. But we have to balance that with their personal needs, whether it be for growth in their occupation, or whether it be personal growth, or just creating opportunities for them. And I think we also forget, but it's important for us to remember, that we're also preparing our students for participation, for democratic citizenship in a global environment. And that's the one that gets lost. But that's also one, as all three of those components come out of our general education, get what I hope is reinforced in our more specialized courses in the major, whether it be as an undergraduate major or in a graduate program. And I think all three of those are important. It may be a little bit more challenging to do in different environments than others, but the goal is to try to light a fire to get students to engage with the material and each other. And what I found most rewarding out of teaching online was to get engaged with them. And so I did a little thing. I actually called each student before the beginning of class during the week before. Took a little time. Thankfully, cell phones, you can block your number for a short period of time if you don't want your number to be revealed to them. But I was able to call them and tell them a little bit about myself and find out a little bit more about themselves, so that when I read through the discussions, I had them tell a little bit about themselves to each other that they wish to reveal. And I asked them to send me a photo. And before I started reading those discussions, I'd read through their introduction, I'd look at their picture so that I was dealing with a real human being as opposed to an abstract paper. That's what worked for me to make it really meaningful and to find time. In my role as the Dean of Distance Education at USD, I don't get to see very many students. And the ones that I do get to hear from are usually those that are finding problems either with a faculty member or a faculty member's grading or a faculty member not responding. And so just like I was probably a student, what I would tell the instructor or someone I was complaining to wasn't always the full story, so that there are many sides to things, and it's never fun to investigate those, but there's usually multiple realities that occur. And so I just would give you the urge, for my personal benefit, if for no one else's, don't disappear from your classes like students do, and try to respond in a timely manner and do your grading in a timely manner. As we look at the evaluations, those are probably the two things that cause most people to get poor teaching evaluations in online classes. The last thing that I want to do is to call attention. We're trying to create this online community of scholars, that we are scholar practitioners and teacher scholars. And this is an effort to create a community so that we can all learn from each other. And it's time for me to get out of the way so that you can learn from more experts. So I'll turn it back to Angela.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Carr. And now I would like to welcome Renetta Fox. She's going to be talking a little bit about what the Disability Services Office does and a little bit about how you do have a student in your course who has declared to you that they might have some difficulty in accessing materials or using the technology. Renetta's going to kind of talk to that a little bit and touch a little bit. Well, we'll just let Renetta just go where she wants to go. And I can pull up the website because she's very gifted and talented in what she does.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Do I have to stand in a certain spot, like on this X or something? Okay. I'm Renetta Fox, I'm Director of Disability Services here at the University of South Dakota. I've been in the position for 13 years. In November, it'll be 14 years. So have been working with students to ensure that they have access to the programs and services at the University of South Dakota. My office, I tell people my office is here to comply, of course, with the law, but it's also here to make sure that we don't discriminate against those students with disabilities. So my office is about access, not success. And I think it's really important to say that, because we look to a lot of other resources on campus for the success part. I just have to make sure that the student has access to those. So the way we make sure they have access is have them register with Disability Services. We get documentation of their disability. The student and I enter into an interactive process to determine what accommodations would be appropriate and reasonable for them. So in the online environment, you're probably going to see primarily students needing extra time for exams and having that extra time extended also for quizzes. Extra time for exams is the one accommodation that almost every student in my office has, because it provides access to students with a variety of disabilities. So for example, if I have a student with a learning disability who it may take them longer to process information, the extra time allows them to show you that they've mastered the material. Whereas if we left them to the time limit that the rest of the class has, they may not be able to show you that they've mastered the material. They need extra time to process information. A lot of my students who have psychiatric or mental health disabilities are on lots of psychiatric medications that slow the brain down. And so they need that extra time to process the information, to show you that they've mastered the material. Or if I have a student who is visually impaired, it takes them just longer to use the computer because of the software they have to use to access things. So it's really about access. and whether or not the student has access to the information, the programs and services here at the university. So a lot of students with disabilities will take an online class thinking that because they have a disability, the online class is going to be a lot easier for them. Or they may think that the online class they won't require any accommodations for. For example, I had a deaf student once who signed up for a class online thinking it would all be written. And of course, she got into the class and there were a lot of videos that she had to watch, and none of them were closed captioned. So she thought she was on a path that would be very successful for her, and right away found that there was a huge access issue for her in that the videos weren't closed captioned. So sometimes the students will get in your class and they'll say, oh, I have a disability. That's when you say, you need to contact Ornetta Fox at Disability Services. Feel free to CC me on those emails if you do it outside of D2L, because I do not have access to email in D2L. Or you can email me. I've sent an email to this student that they need to contact you. Here's their information, and I'll reach out to them. Big thing is students don't have to use my services if they don't want to. What that means for you is you do not have to provide accommodations for that student unless they come through my office. I'm kind of the gatekeeper for that. So if you have a student who says, oh, I need extra time for exams because I have ADHD, and whatever story they come up to tell you, refer them to my office. If you want accommodations in this course, you need to go through Disability Services, and that's a really important step for you. It protects you, it protects the student, it protects the university, and makes sure that all the X's and Y's and Z's are on the documentation that we need in order to show that we are indeed not discriminating against that student. That's how we show we're not discriminating, is having them go through my office. So we have a new person in my office, Karen Garrity, who handles primarily online and distance ed students. She was going to come tonight, but she got ill, so I'm your substitute presenter. So you may be getting emails from Karen. So know that not all the emails may come from me. They may come from Karen Garrity. She has lots of experience in the disability field, especially with students who are visually impaired. I work more with students with hearing impairments. She works more with students who are visually impaired. Taking online classes for an individual who is visually impaired is very difficult because of the way they have to access the information on the computer. They have to use additional software to actually read what's going on the computer to them. I don't believe we've had a student who has been actually blind in an online course. We have had a few students with visual impairments in an online course. And again, the thing is, if they say, I'm having difficulty reading something, send them my way. We may be able to share some software with them that will allow them to have better access. We may be able to hook them up with vocational rehab services, and vocational rehab services provide them with the materials they need to have that digital access. Or we may just call and talk to them, and they may be able to do it on their own. They just don't know they can do it on their own, and we just kind of talk them through that. So that's what we do. Am I using too much time? 2 more minutes? Oh, okay. So there are links to 2 websites that I've put up for you. One of them is for course accessibility, and the other one is for digital access. They're both websites that I created. Oh, this is the digital access one. This one I created with Danielle Loftus, who is the technology librarian from ID Weeks for the LibTech conference. The LibTech conference is an annual conference that deals with library technology. We did a presentation on digital access for librarians, and this was the presentation. Talks a lot about what the law says, talks a lot about how the law has been interpreted. That's the guidance there. Then it gives you assistive technology. If you click on that. I think that's it. Yeah. Let's see, scroll down. Oh, here we go. So I have it broken down. Scroll a little more down. Oh, whoa, back up. Right there, software. So what I have is software, and talking about software that provides accessibility. And I have it broken down into general accessibility, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, screen readers, screen magnifiers, and reading tools. Take a look at some of those. A lot of them that I have listed are free software, so you can download them and try them. If you'll go into the text-to-speech, I believe. Scroll down, and then I have links to Natural Reader. Scroll on down. Natural Reader. This is a free program that a lot of people use. They say it works almost as well as other text-to-speech programs, so you may want to explore that one. But again, if you'll click on the Natural Reader, that'll give you a link to Natural Reader. It should. Ta-da! And then I also have videos embedded so that you can watch the videos. So take a look at these websites. If you have questions about anything in the websites, give me a call. If you notice that a link isn't working, give me a call, because I do check them, but sometimes links change and I just don't catch it. So if there's not a link that works. I have another website that is a little different, that talks more about what assistive technology is. And I'll send you the link to that, because they have some really nice little what is assistive technology. Because we talk about assistive technology, most people think right away of computers and softwares. That's not always what assistive technology is. Assistive technology can be as simple as a pencil grip for a person who has mobility issues in their hands. It can be as simple as a standing desk for a person with a back problem. So assistive technology that we do in our department is much, much broader than just software and computers. Yeah, it's much, much broader. So I do have another assistive technology website, and I'll send Angela the link. Again, explore them. If you ever have a question, a student, don't know what to do, don't know how to approach it, give me a call. Send me an email. We'll schedule a time to talk. Because I'm really here as a resource for you, as much, if not more, than I am a resource for the students. So, am I out of time? Okay. Call me. That's the big thing. Don't forget that I'm here. Don't think that you have to deal with maybe a sticky situation with a student with a disability without accessing my office. One other thing I want to say, you will have students in your classes who aren't USD students. The way the Board of Regents has that structured for us is that if an SDSU student is in your class, they work through SDSU's Disability Services Office. So you'll be getting information from Nancy at State, or you'll be getting information from Megan at School of Mines. So those students work with their home institution's Disability Services Office. So if you have a SDSU student who contacts you about needing more time on exams, refer them to the SDSU Disability Services Office. That's the way the Board of Regents has it structured. That way a student doesn't have to register at multiple disability services offices. They only get registered at their home institution. Is that it? Thank you for having me, and call me. I have no idea. I don't have access to WebAdvisor.
I think WebAdvisor will show the primary institution, and if not in D2L, it will show their, I think it shows their email address and whatever institution is at the end of that. So at coyotes.usd.edu, at jax.ststate.edu, that will be their home institution. Yeah. Yeah.
They do. Sometimes you can check in Colleague if you have access to Colleague, but sometimes even Colleague isn't correct. I'm working with a student now who's actually a USD student, but it shows in Colleague that she's a Mines student because she never completed the withdrawal process at Mines. So she's USD, but it shows she's Mines. So
You can always call admissions or their academic advisor if you get that information.
too. Any other questions? Y'all are so quiet. You are. Okay. Let me know if you have any problems. Hopefully you won't. Hopefully we'll get all the information to you about students who are enrolled in your courses that we know about. Thank you.
Thank you, Renetta. So for those who are following us online, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to just kind of build on what Renetta was talking about a little bit with some of the online accessibility. So I have a couple handouts up here. Did all of you get them? I'll just pass them around. I know you got one, and so did you get one? Okay. And for those who are online, these handouts will be available here and all the handouts that Arnetta was referring to will be found in the online faculty community. So what we're trying to do to build with the online faculty community is to be a repository. A lot of you remember this from your training. It used to be called the Online Faculty Orientation course, and we've renamed it now, the Online Faculty Community. And what we're trying to do is to have this one-stop shop kind of place where you can go to find the latest policies, and refer back to the process for electronically delivered courses, and basically to find the tools and resources that you need in order to be an effective instructor online. So it's not just, there's this perception that it was just made for people who are going through orientation. That's not true. It's actually ongoing. So you can refer back to this. So in the online faculty community, you'll see if you click on content, and on the left-hand side, actually I'll scroll down, there is a module called the 2018 Online Faculty Symposium. So here is where you will find the documents and the links that Arnetta was referring to. I'll upload those here. You'll also find the recording for today's session here in this as well, and I probably won't get those uploaded until tomorrow, but they'll be available. A couple other things that I wanted to point out, because I get a lot of questions about this, is where can I find the most current policies for my syllabus? And if you go to the Policies and Procedures module at the top, many of you remember this from your initial training, there is a document called University Policies for Syllabus. And I send this out to everyone. I'm sure you've been getting my reminder emails with this attachment. And so this has got, this actually document was sent to me by Dr. Card. So this is, from what I understand, the latest, the most current version, what should be in your syllabus. So as I'm going through and some of you are getting ready for your 3-year review coming up on your courses, you want to make sure that, or even now at the start of the semester, just make sure that, check your current syllabus. Sometimes you copy over content from an old course and you're using an old syllabus and it's got outdated policies in it. So you just take a minute to compare. And here is the current disability accommodation statement that Arnetta was referring to, with this statement here about if your home institution is not the University of South Dakota, but one of the other South Dakota Board of Regents institutions, you need to work with the Disability Services Coordinator at your home institution. So that should be in there. And then also the Diversity Inclusive Excellence statement is now required. There was some confusion there, whether it was optional, whether it was required, but it is now required to be in there, okay? Also under the content area, if we scroll down, we've added some new modules. So under online pedagogy and best practices, if you click on that and scroll down, you will see there is a module called accessibility. And up at the top, scroll up, there is Arnetta's contact information. So that's how you find her phone number and where she's located. And then down below, you'll find a link to her digital access website she shared with you, as well as the USD site. And then there's various other presentations in here. I do want to point out we get a lot of questions about captioning.
And down below here, we do have some video tutorials on how to do closed captionings. And we have also one specific for Collaborate Ultra, and then we also have ones for Panopto, for those of you who are using Panopto, on how to enable that feature. And then for those of you who are interested in how to make your course documents more accessible, we have tutorials on that too, for PowerPoints, Word, and Adobe Acrobat. Okay. One of the handouts that I gave to you was an accessibility checklist. So that checklist is basically just a basic guide to what the minimum expectations are for an online course, getting your online course ready. I also would like to reference at this time the quality assurance rubric. There was a couple changes and updates. So if we go back to the faculty symposium, I think I have a link to that right here, the new 2017. So I do want to point out that there is a module here, accessibility. It's been there, but there was an additional standard that was added here, standard 8.3. So the course is compliant with current accessibility standards. So those of you who are going through review with me or went through review with me this summer, you were introduced to this list, and there's others who haven't reviewed with me yet who will be being reviewed to this. So Eric, did you want to say a couple of things about this?
Yeah, so this is an example of one of the things we're trying to do with the rubric is incorporate recommended standards that likely will become required standards at some point in the future. I don't know where we're at the system level with coming into compliance with the federal law that actually says we have to have our content accessible by design. Right now, we're still working off the accommodation model. You could see that in the disability services statement they're all required to have. Federal law actually states that our content has to be accessible now. And so this is trying to get people prepared for that. So we don't know when the board policy is going to change with respect to that. We've talked to some of board legal, and they're like, yeah, it's federal law. We need to do this. So we're kind of up in the air right now. But eventually this is going to change, and eventually we're going to have to make this these updates to our courses to make sure that's the case. We've taken some steps to do this already. Obviously we're doing training and so forth to try to keep on top of that. We updated D2L. The interface is more accessible now than it was in the past. So, but these are just kind of things to keep in mind. And so I wouldn't necessarily worry about, unless you really want to, go into your course and start retrofitting it for accessibility. What I would encourage you to do, though, is if you're updating your course, if you're adding materials, try to keep these accessibility standards in mind, because it's going to be a lot easier to adopt materials that are accessible at the beginning than to go back and retrofit them. So if you're doing new videos for your class, try to work off of a transcript and then caption that transcript to the video, as we've got a number of tutorials on how to do that. I think we're going to do a demo today of one of those as well, that can help you speed up that process a little bit as well. So the most important thing to know is that you guys are not alone in this. We're all going to have to go through this together. We're going to have some sort of massive organization to help this. We just don't know what all those pieces are yet. And so as soon as we find out, we will definitely share that with you, and we'll come up with an implementation plan for that.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Okay, so for those of you who are making new videos this semester, and you're kind of getting this question pretty much every day, is, how do I do this? How do I caption? I'm using Collaborate Ultra. I've got the recording. What do I do with it? So the Center for Teaching and Learning, we have staff here that can help you, kind of walk you through that. And then we also have tutorials in the online faculty community as well, like I pointed out, that you can access to help you along with that. Also, under the communications tool, we're trying to build a discussions, and so feel free, Eric and I both get alerts when there's items posted in here, but feel free to go in and ask questions and to discuss things. This really is for all of you. We want to build this for you. We want your suggestions on how we can make it more friendly for you, more easier for you to, I guess, utilize and benefit you and the resources in it. So I'm always looking for feedback as well. Some of you participate in the online faculty forum. So I do 3 of those every semester. So I encourage you to come to those with your questions. Those recordings are also put up in the online faculty community course. So you have access to those when you need them. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and change gears a little bit. I want to share with you, Shannon has been really kind to let me use her course as a little guinea pig course, but as we're going through this today. But I want to just kind of share with you some design ideas. As many of you are laying out your courses and you're trying to get things to fit in the new D2L, daylight look, I just want to share with you some best practices kind of guide you in both. So I do want to point out the visual pieces that Shannon had put in her course. I think Eric does the same thing with his. This is a really great best practice. If you are interested in doing something like this, and we get faculty asking Shannon, where do I get these icons from? So Shannon can provide those to you. But you see the combination of both visual and text, how, when you look at it, how engaging. Today, we're used to seeing these icons that are representative. So for the students, they're used to seeing this. So using, visual cues along with the text as well. And of course, the expectation is that, having something in the USD course info widget that's fairly impactful, doesn't have to be, an image, but just something that is kind of a little eye-catching, and then of course having the welcome message in your course as well, just welcoming the students to to the semester, and a little bit of the navigation in that, just helping them kind of get orientated to the course. I do want to share something really neat. I encourage all of the faculty to try to do, like, add a bio or an intro video or something like that. I thought Shannon had a really interesting, she used Microsoft Sway to build this, and it's a little bit bigger on this screen than what it shows on my Mac. But it just gives you an idea of a visual introduction, and it gives the students a little peek into your life, what you do, and just about your hobbies and things. So I thought this was a really nice example of something that's a little bit different than, just the standard text-based, welcome to the course, and this is who I am. So it gives you some ideas on what you can do with it. So Shannon, Microsoft Sway, I haven't used it before. Is that free? Is that a free tool?
Yes, it is free. Yeah, and so Sway is their new way of, like, new presentation tool. Just let you talk a little bit about this.
Okay. Should I go up to the front? Okay. So, yeah, I found this, and so Sway is their presentation tool. So if you want to do instead of PowerPoints, you can do something like this. They have different layouts for you. They have templates, so you can adjust. It's really user friendly. It's just drag and drop type of thing in there. Just add for it. But yeah, you can kind of. I just found my images and put them in there, and so instead of a normal PowerPoint, the idea behind Sway is to make it look more like a website with it. So it's a different way of visually presenting information, essentially, is what it is for it. But yeah, and yeah, it is free for it.
I haven't checked the VPAD on that, but I'll do that. So.
When I put my images in, it will ask you for alternative text and that for it, so it does do that stuff. And then just like your normal, it choose headers for the screen reader, so you choose headers, paragraphs for it, so that's how you do it. So you just have to set it up that way. But
yeah. So that discussion for those online we were talking about is Sway accessible, and Shannon was explaining that, and which is good practice in D2L as well. When you insert an image into D2L, it'll ask you to insert an alt text, or you can check the box decorative image. So if you are putting an image in there, that's something, either way, I don't check the decorative image box. I put a description in there of what that image is, so that when the assistive technology gets to the page, it'll read it back to the student. I want to go into the content area and also share a few best practices about how to organize a course that works well also with assistive technologies, and point out some other things that Shannon has done here. You'll notice that she's using different font sizes and not just relying on color. Somebody who is perhaps colorblind or has a visual disability wouldn't be able to really, see that very easily. So using different size fonts, italicizing, bolding. So the idea is to use something other than just color to convey your message, or to bring, or to accent or emphasize something on the page. And you'll see here that she has links to documents at the bottom, as well as links to videos and her discussion topics. So we encourage you, as you're building activities in your course, to link those from the weekly module level, rather than having the students have to come up here and click on communications to get to the discussions, or assessments to get to the Dropbox. You can add those elements into the page here. So I'm in student view. If I was in instructor view, you can just use the add existing activity if you've already created them. Any questions on that? Does everybody know how to use that tool, to use the add existing activity tool to bring in activities at the module level? Yep. And that's worked really, really well, and it also reinforces the course schedule when you organize it chronologically like this. So you can see here how she's putting her learning objectives. So this is, again, a best practice to make it clear to the students what they're going to be doing in that module, or what they're going to be doing in that week. You'll see how Shannon has used that here, and then she describes what the students are going to be doing down below. She's got broken up by readings, the activities, and then she has the links to the various activities and the supplemental materials down below. And we did have a question that came in that was asking about how do you use the restrictions so that a student has to complete, for example, maybe you want them to complete a quiz in a previous module before they're able to access something in the next module. Or maybe you want to restrict a particular activity to a group. And so I'd like to just show that, because we are getting, I think we get quite a few questions on that. So I'm going to switch over out of student view here for a minute and go to content. So any of the, I know, what would you call these, Eric? These aren't really this content topics. There's something called add dates and restrictions, and this is also available down below on activities that you set. So if you choose edit properties in place, this gets a little advanced, but if you, there it is. Click on dates and restrictions. When you click create, it's going to come up and give you a condition type box. And if you click the condition type box, whoops, it will allow you to choose what restriction you want to put on that item. So if you want to restrict it to just a group and you have groups set up, you can choose the group you want to restrict it to. If you want to restrict it to, they have to submit something in the Dropbox before they complete this activity, then you could choose this, and then the wizard will walk you through. The same down here for quizzes. Maybe they need to score an 85% on this quiz before they're able to move on to the next one. Okay, so this is a way, especially with quizzes, what I really like about that is it allows the student to develop competency on a topic, or before they move on to the next one, and they can demonstrate that competency, and you can kind of scaffold approach them along in their learning. So that's one way that you can do that. You can, so you have all of these different options that you can choose as restrict conditions to restrict that topic. So I think Maylene, you had a question on that. Was there anybody else who has a question on restrictions or how to use them? Other restrictions that you can use obviously on items are the date restriction tool. So you can add a start date and a due date. At the module level, I really don't recommend you putting, especially up here, there's an option to add an end date. If you add an end date at this level, the when that end date comes, the student won't be able to access that module. So if you have a student who wants to be able to go back, they won't be able to go back and access that previous module. So you're better, my suggestion is just add a start date and no end date. And yes, did you have a question, Martin?
Do those restrictions that you pose on the module level override those that you have at the item level? Or?
They do, yeah. So the question was, do the module level dates have override the item level dates in the module? And the answer is yes, it will. The student, once, if you add an end date, the student won't be able to even see the module after that date and nor access any of the items inside of it. So, yes. Yes, and you had a question? Oh, you've missed the first step in the process? Okay, so I'm going to go back to, so at the module level, for example, this is commonly used when you want a student to complete one module before they move to the next. So underneath module, just click Add Dates and Restrictions, and then click Create under Release Conditions. So underneath Release Conditions, click Create, and then select a condition type. If you click that drop-down box, it will allow you to choose a condition type. So you hear where it says Visit Content Topic. If I click on that, and I don't know if our online people can see that. Let me look. Yep, they can. You can select the topic in the drop-down box of what you want them to complete. Maybe you want them to complete week 1 before they move on to the next item. Okay, so this is I think this is a really neat tool that D2L has. A lot of instructors don't make use of these restrictions, and I often see that they're not making use of some of the other tools that you have in D2L, such as due dates and things. Okay. Do you have any other questions on any of that? We're good there? Okay. Then I wanted to take a minute to look at and just talk a little bit about the discussion forums. So another best practice is to allow your students to have a place where they can post questions regarding the course or any content questions. Shannon calls this the learning circle. Some of you call this the coffee hour or the water cooler, the jazz lounge, yeah. And it allows students to have an open dialogue and reflect and ask questions and conversate with each other inside the course shell and start to develop community with the students, building community with one another. And so we also use this in another way. We encourage, or at least when I was teaching online, I encourage my students to post their questions here as long as they're not of a personal nature. They post their questions here, and then I can go back and respond to them, and the whole class gets to benefit. Oftentimes, I have a student who will send, 3 or 4 students will send me the same question, and I go here and post it. That way, I don't have to send 3 or 4 emails. I just post my response here, and the whole and everyone gets to benefit from it. The other one is the introduction. As all of you know, this is actually one of the requirements in the QA rubric. So all of you should have what we call a week 1 introduction to allow the students to introduce themselves. And I wanted to speak to this for just a minute because Eric and I have the opportunity to see some of the feedback from the early alert surveys and the feedback I get to hear from all of you on what some of the student comments are. And I want to share that this particular student-to-student piece interaction is very important for students, and they really like it. When it's not in the course, we hear about it. You may not hear about it, but we see it, coming across in the work that we do. But students really like to be able to have an opportunity to engage with one another. So if you don't have weekly discussions in your course, I encourage you to at least have a week 1 introduction and then have at least a place like a learning circle or something where students can engage with one another and start this dialogue. This can be a great resource for you as well to communicate with your students. You know, weekly wrap-ups can be posted in here, comments on generally how things are going. And in addition to this, you can also use the news tool on the course homepage for doing weekly wrap-ups, introducing the upcoming week. And if you encourage your students to turn on notifications in their profile, each time you post a news announcement, they'll get a notification in their email, and that'll encourage them to go back into the course, you know, and keeps them coming back, which is another best practice. Shannon, did you have a chance to put a practice quiz in there for me? You did put a syllabus quiz. Awesome. So one of the other items that, as you can see, Shannon put a syllabus quiz in here as a week 1 activity. The other thing I encourage you to do is oftentimes for online, students don't read the syllabus. One of the questions that I get all the time is, how do I get my students to read the documents in the course? How do I know that they're reading them? And how do we know? Well, one of the ways you can do that is, there's a couple different ways. If you put the syllabus link in your content area rather than the home page, when they click on the item in the content area, you can go into the view progress tool within D12 and you can see that they've clicked on it. And it'll, while the timer is clicking, it's just hard to know exactly how much time they spent on it, but at least you know that they accessed it. Another thing you could do is to do a syllabus quiz. Yes?
I had a student
Mainly.
say that if she downloaded the content rather than reading it on the site, it showed that it did not, you know, that she didn't actually do the activity.
Right. So if they download it, that's probably what happened. If they download it rather than view it in the content area, that would probably be true. Anything that you link from the Getting Started widget on the home page, if you directly link it from there, it's not tracked in D12. So if you want to know if they looked at the welcome letter, or they looked at the syllabus, or they looked at the course schedule, anything you link from the course homepage is not tracked in D12. And I'll let Eric add to that.
I think you might be talking about if you can click on content.
Yeah, I'm gonna click on content.
Yeah. And just back up a minute here.
Content or course
Content, please. So, and can you switch to the student view?
Yep.
So if you go, yep. I think what mainly might be talking about here, go back to content. There we go. There is an option to download it, and I can never remember where it's at. I think go into table of contents. Download.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you download it that way, that won't register the clicks because the student's not actually accessing them. So we can't, if they download everything, we can't be sure they've actually looked at anything anyway. So that is one of the weaknesses of the D2L reporting. The other one is timing. I know a number of instructors look at that time like it's gospel, and it's really not. It's just the best guess of D2L between the activity when the student clicks on this link and then when they do something else in D2L, and it just takes the delta of that time and puts that there. But I could click on a video and I could go grab dinner, I could watch Netflix for a little bit, come back, and it shows I watched that video for an hour. So again, you always want to connect that to some sort of an assessment just to measure that effectively.
Yep, good point. And so I'll point out here that Shannon did link her welcome letter, syllabus, course schedule from the content area. And then if we go to the course homepage, when I click on it, if you look at where it's going, it goes to a Google Doc. Okay, so that's where it goes to the cloud. So I guess we can take a minute and talk about that too. So when you're linking from the course homepage, most of you have a Word document or a PDF, right? And you're not linking to a Google Doc. If you link to a Word or a PDF, we prefer that you link to it in the content area, rather than linking directly from the Getting Started widget. In other words, linking to your file directly from here. What I was referring to earlier, excuse me, is that when they click on it here, right, Eric, it's not tracked. Yeah. So yeah, you can link from the Getting Started content. Let me see if I need to log out of here. Okay. Okay. Which is it? Music 100? U821?
clicks on my welcome letter, I also use Google Docs, but it's going to open up Google Docs with the content area.
There we go.
And the nice thing about that is when I copy that widget from semester to semester, I don't go and mess around with the widget to provide those links. I just change my links to the content area. It's a lot quicker and a lot more stable that way. So it does. We just have to switch the home page to the copy home page. And then all those widgets pop back up top.
Yep. Yep. So that's like, yeah, so that actually is a really good point. Getting questions about the, yep.
So if you, and we can actually walk you through it real quick here. So if you go to edit course, and then you go to home pages, when you copy over the course, it actually copies over the home page of that course as well. By default, when you look at a brand new course, all of those widgets are empty. And so what a lot of people will just do is go and edit those widgets. But if you actually switch to the copied homepage that came over from when you did that copy process, it will bring in all those widgets too with all of their content linked. So what I've done to kind of help myself out here, if you scroll down to where it says active, I actually renamed my homepage because otherwise you get like, if you, especially you, I'm talking to Carol here. Carol's been teaching for how many years now online and has how many iterations of those courses? So every time she copies that course over, it copies that homepage. So if she was to look at this now, she probably has 10, 20 homepages there. So I've renamed it. So it says MUS Jazz, MUS 100 Jazz. So I always know that's the one I copied over. I switch it to active, that one, delete all the other ones, and then it's nice and clean that way. And when I switch to that, then you'll see all those widgets populate. And in fact, you can actually show what it looks like. So if you go back up to the very top, you switch the template, the homepage to the daylight one. Yep, right there. Click that. Click apply. My students might panic right now, but that's okay. Go ahead and click on the homepage. So this is probably what you see when you first come in. So your news copies over because those are news items, but then some people will just go and start editing these widgets. But if you switch to that copied homepage, then all of that content's there. And the other reason, again, I do the content, I put my syllabus, welcome letter, and so forth link in the content area for two reasons. A, then I don't have to ever mess with that widget again. I just leave it there because D2L and widgets don't always get along very well. But I also, as I do the reporting, when the student clicks on that syllabus, I clicked on the syllabus then. So if I get a lot of questions like, when's this due, when's that due? Well, it looks like you haven't accessed this yet. Why don't you go ahead and do that and then get back to me. So how do we link from the getting started to content? It's just as simple as linking to a content item. So instead of linking, so under you, when you go in here normally, you would link it to a file. Instead, you're just going to link it to content.
Right. So what I do is I just highlight the item,
Yep.
and go to the quick link button, and up here, click this drop-down arrow, and then choose content.
And then you can navigate to what you want. That's as easy as that. You just choose content instead of course file. And it allows you a link to that, and then it'll open up in D2L instead of in an external window. Okay? So we get quite a few questions on that one too. Okay, with that being said, we're out of time for the first session, and so we're gonna take a couple minute break here, 1 or 2 minute break, and then we're gonna move into session 2. So we'll just get set up for that. Okay, we'll be right back.